Hey guys, how's it going? So, jewel cases. I know many of you guys have these things in your collections, and the thing about them is that they are extremely gorgeous to look at when they're brand new. I mean, like, they allow you to see the artwork very clearly. I mean, they're really small and nice to handle, and on top of that, they're very good places to store your CDs and all that stuff. But the thing about jewel cases though is that, and I'm sure many of you guys know this from first-hand experience, is that they're very fragile. I mean, like, they develop these scratches on them, and of course, you know, if you buy these things used from like stores and stuff, they're gonna have sticker residue that is on them, and they are extremely hard to get rid of. And people sometimes accidentally drop these things on the floor, which causes these things to have cracks on them, and sometimes they actually dropped it so hard that it actually caused the front cover to break off its hinge, which is a really crummy thing to deal with. And I'm sure you guys at this point have probably wondered if there's a way to restore these things back to when they were brand new. And the answer to that is yes, you can absolutely do that, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you guys in this video. But before we move on, there's one thing that I'd like to say and that is the reason why I'm using so many Dreamcast games for this video is because I have so many of them laying around, and I thought it would be very convenient for use in this video because you can actually use this tutorial with music CDs, PlayStation 1 games, Sega Saturn games, basically any game console that use CD jewel cases for their game packaging. And of course that also applies with the TurboGrafx 16. Alright, so the very first thing that you're going to need is obviously replacement jewel cases. Now there are many different types of places that you can buy these from. I've only managed to try out 3. I bought some Innovera brand ones from Walmart. I've also bought some generic brand from Amazon. And the third one, well, I'm going to talk more about it after I talk about these two first. Okay, so here's a copy of Blue Stinger here, and what I've done is that I've replaced the original jewel case with the Innovera branded jewel case from Walmart. And as you can see here, the artwork looks nice and all that kind of stuff. And you know, and one thing you're going to see here in a little bit is that the front cover doesn't bend backwards on itself, which is a characteristic of many poorly made jewel cases. But unfortunately, this jewel case didn't live to my expectations because it's hard to convey on the video, but this thing feels absolutely cheap. I mean, like, it kind of opens and closes very poorly, and also the edges on this thing is extremely sharp and all that stuff. It's not that fun to handle. So moving on from that, I got a copy of Sonic Adventure right here, and I've replaced this game's jewel cases with the generic Amazon branded one. Now before I talk about this thing, there is also one thing I would like to say about this, and that is, do you notice there's these 2 black dots on the case right here? You may be thinking that it's part of the manual, but actually it's not. It's actually part of the jewel case. And the reason that they're there is because this jewel case was made from recycled plastic. And that makes me kind of sad because I like buying things that has recycled plastic in them. But unfortunately with jewel cases, if you buy them recycled, you're gonna get these black dots in them. Anyway, so other than those little blemishes, this case is absolutely clear to look at. As you can see, you know, there are no scratches on this thing. It's absolutely vibrant and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, this case opens up a lot more nicely than the Walmart branded Innovera jewel cases. And that's a very nice thing to have. But there is one thing that is very unfortunate with this, and that is the hinge swings completely backwards on its side, which is absolutely bummers to this case. At least the edges of this thing is very nice, but yeah, but the thing is that, you know, because of that little mishap, this wasn't the perfect jewel case for me. I was not very happy with this thing. And one more thing that these 2 particular jewel cases have that is missing is that if you notice on the top right corner, on the place where there should be a compact digital audio logo, there is like a blank space that is in them, which really disappointed on me. So yeah, as I said before, these 2 brands of jewel cases did not make me happy. So after my disappointment with these 2 brands of jewel cases, I then decided to look out for another brand of jewel cases, and that is when I came upon the 3rd brand of jewel case that I bought, which is none other than the ones that were made by Uline. and they come in this super freaking big package right here, and this is what the jewel case looks like. Absolutely clear to look at, and guess what? The front part of this jewel case does not swing backwards. It absolutely works. And even if you try to, you have to use some serious force in order to get bend it backward like I did here. But basically, if you snap it back into place, it will be okay again. And guess what? This jewel case also has the compact disc digital audio logo that I was looking for, and that is awesome. So yeah, I'm sure you guys can tell that I absolutely love this jewel case. It's well made and all that kind of stuff, but the only problem with this thing is that unfortunately this company was not very careful when packaging these things, because some of these cases that I received had some really deep gashes in them and all that kind of stuff, which is not fun to deal with. And I'll be sure to write a letter to them about that. But anyways, these are the absolute best cases that I've tried out so far. I would absolutely recommend these things to you guys, and I'm going to be using this for this tutorial. Now the subject that we're going to be using today is this copy of NFL Blitz 2000. Now the reason I chose this thing is because it has a black jewel case, which I feel will help you guys better understand how to exactly take apart a jewel case. Alright, so before we move on, there's one more thing that I would like to say, and that is most people recommend that you use a flathead screwdriver or a knife to take apart these things, and I'm actually going to be using my thumbs for this video, and I'll explain why I will be using those instead in a little bit. So the very first thing that you're going to need to do is that you're going to need to open up your jewel case right here. Then you want to slide your manual out of the front part of your jewel case right here. Now, if you look closely where the hinge of the jewel case is at, you will notice there's like a gap in there. What you need to do is to wedge your thumbnail into that gap, and now the front cover of the jewel case should easily come off. Now, what we're going to need to do next is that we're going to need to take our CD out of the disc tray and put it gently on our manual, because now we're going to actually take apart the back part of the jewel case, which is considered by many to be the most difficult part of this whole procedure. And it can be pretty hard the first time you do this, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So if you look between here on the black and the clear part of this jewel case, there's actually a gap. What you're going to need to do is that you're going to need to wedge your thumbnail in between that gaps and lift up on that corner of the jewel case. Then what you now need to do next is slide down to the other corner of the jewel case, wedge your thumbnail into the gaps right there, and then lift up as I've done right here. And once you've done that, your jewel case should come apart completely, and now you can have access to the back insert of this case right here. And once you've done all of that, you're basically finished with taking apart your jewel case. So before we move on in this tutorial, I would like to tell you guys all about the parts of the jewel case and how it all works together, so you guys have a very good comprehension of all this stuff when you move on to the next stage of this tutorial. So anyways, so basically a jewel case consists of three main parts: the front cover, the disc tray, and then you got the back cover of the jewel case right here. Now, all these things are connected to each other through a series of pegs and holes. For example, you can see on the front cover here, there's a peg for where it would swing on its hinge. And then if you look on the disc tray, on each one of the corners, there is a peg on them. Which is why I actually told you guys earlier in this video to separate the, basically the back part of the jewel case on the corners because of this very reason. And then if you look on the back piece of this jewel case, you will actually find the holes where all these pegs are supposed to connect to. And as you can see here, there are 4 holes on each side of this back part of the jewel case. And this big hole right here is for the hinge of the front cover of the jewel case. The small one's for one corner of the disc tray. This hole is actually not used for the disc tray, it's actually used to keep the front cover shut. This one right here is used for the other corner of the disc tray. And the same thing can be said about the other side of this back part of the jewel case. So the next thing that we're going to need to do is that we're going to practice putting this jewel case back together, because we're obviously going to need to do the same thing on the replacement jewel case. So the very first thing that we're going to need to do is to locate which side has the larger hole. As we can see in this case, it's the left side. Then we're going to put our disc tray with that big black bulky piece on the same side with the larger hole. Once you slide it in there, now you're going to push down on these corners right here to engage the pegs into the holes, as you can obviously see in this shot right here. which is very good. Now, I know you guys may be asking yourselves, what if I accidentally put it on the wrong side? Well, it's actually really difficult to do that, and I'll show you guys that in a little bit. But as you can see, the hinge holes are on the left side, and you can clearly see me putting the disc tray in the wrong way. But the thing is that basically the pegs will have no holes to lock into. And actually, you can actually see in this shot is that I actually broke off one of those pegs trying to put it in the wrong way. So the thing is that if you feel like it's not like closing in the correct way, you should most definitely try to put it in the other way. So continuing where we left off, we need to put the front cover back onto the jewel case. Now what you need to do is to take the bottom peg of the front cover and slide it into that hole. Now the nice thing about these jewel cases is that they usually have like a groove for you to easily slide the pegs into holes, as you can see on this shot right here. So what you need to do is that you're going to take the other end of the front cover and slide it into the groove, and then it will easily pop into the hole of the back part of that jewel case. And once you've done that, you're basically all finished. Now I know I've done this whole entire part of the tutorial with a black jewel case, but the reason I did that is to make it easier for you guys to see the gaps and to see how all the parts of the jewel case works. The very good thing is that all these principles and rules also applies to clear jewel cases as well. And I'm going to demonstrate to you guys that is exactly the case in this next shot right here. So here I got one of these brand new Uline jewel cases, and what I'm doing right here is I'm checking to see if there's any blemishes with the jewel cases, because obviously you don't want to use a jewel case that has like scratches and all that kind of stuff. You want to make sure that it's all good and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm doing right here is I exactly took off the front cover of the jewel case right here, and then here I am wedging my fingers in between the gaps of the disc tray and the back cover, and I'm basically popping off all those pegs from their holes right here. And yeah, this can be a little bit more difficult. I think actually in my personal experience it's a little bit harder to take apart the clear jewel cases than the standard black jewel cases. And here's me trying to show off that basically all the parts of the clear jewel case are the exact same, with the only exception that instead of the disc tray being black, it's clear in this case. So yeah, that's basically the only difference between a black and a clear jewel case. Anyway, so what I'm doing right here is I'm trying to blow all the dust out of these cases and all that kind of stuff, because like when you have all these parts like fully assembled and all that kind of stuff, if there's like any dust that's in these things, you cannot get it out unless you take apart the whole jewel case again. So make sure there's no dust in there. So now you obviously have to locate the hinge hole, and obviously, do you see the part where it says Sega All-Stars? That's always supposed to line up with where the hole is at. So yeah, so what I'm doing right here is make sure there's absolutely no dust that I missed and all that kind of stuff, because now what we're going to need to do is that we're going to put the disc tray onto this cover part right here. And yeah, basically I'm trying to slide these pegs into the holes right here and then snapping them into place. And then this is the part where you basically slide the front cover back on. And I've already told you guys how to basically put this thing back on, so I'm not going to explain it. Instead, I'm going to actually take the time now to explain why I decided to use my thumbs for this whole entire process instead of using the screwdriver. When you use your thumb, you can exactly tell how much pressure you're putting onto the jewel case and all that kind of stuff. Because I have a tendency whenever I use the screwdriver to accidentally put on way too much, pressure onto the plastic parts of the jewel case, causing it to snap and all that kind of stuff. And that's why I absolutely recommend using it with your thumbs instead. The thing is though, is that your thumbs will hurt like crazy the first few times that you do it. But once you've done this many times, your thumbs get very callous to this whole entire process, and it doesn't hurt as much anymore. So yeah, I'm done with assembling this thing back together, and here is what the finished product looks like. As you can see, it looks absolutely gorgeous right now. You can see all the detail and all that stuff, and there's absolutely no scratches, cracks, or stickers on this thing. But the sad thing is that jewel cases are eventually going to return back into that state if you don't do anything to protect them. So that is when I decided to look for some solutions, and the solution actually came from a rival music format, vinyl records. For you see that records, they usually have this plastic cover that keeps the record album arts from getting damaged and all that kind of stuff. And I started thinking to myself, is there any way to make a similar type of plasticky sleeve like this for your CD jewel cases? And that's when an idea came upon me that you can use sandwich bags as protection for your CD jewel cases. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to be showing you guys in this next part. Now, whenever you're talking about sandwich bags, I'm sure the very first thing that popped into everybody's head is Ziploc bags. Now here's the thing, unfortunately these things are not very good for the purposes of protecting your jewel cases, and let me explain why. First of all, the Ziploc bags tend to have this really ugly greenish tinge to them, and it may not be apparent on video, but I'll show you guys by basically stacking all these on top of each other, and you can see that it is very green and it can be ugly to look at when basically displaying your games. And also on top of that, they have this really sticky feeling to them, and they're also really easy to get scratched and damaged and all that kind of stuff. So what I've basically done is that I've gotten rid of all these Ziploc bags and I've replaced them with two other brands of jewel cases that I'm going to show you guys right now. So the other brands that I've chosen is Boulders and the Publix variety of sandwich bags. And let me tell you guys, these things are very good. So here are my copies of Daytona USA and Metropolis Street Racer. So the Daytona USA has the Publix sandwich bag over it, and the Metropolis Street Racer has the Boulder sandwich bag over it. Now, as you can see, these two look absolutely gorgeous. They look way better than the Ziploc bags that I showed you guys earlier. But if I had to prefer one of these sandwich bags, I would definitely prefer the Boulders one. And I'll explain more about that in a little bit. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be using the sandwich bags from Publix as it's the only brand that I have available at the moment. Alright, so the very first thing that you're going to need to do is that you're going to need to take a pair of scissors and cut off the sealable part of the sandwich bag, as I'm doing right here. So yeah, just make sure that you cut away all the way across this thing. And yeah, so that's basically what you need to do for the very first part right here. So once you've done that, now it's time to take your game and slide it into this new plastic protection piece that you made for your CD jewel case. And now unfortunately we have a problem. For you see that we have these extra pieces of plastic at the bottom of the jewel case right here. But don't worry about that, I got a solution to the problem. And the answer is masking tape. So what we're going to do with this masking tape is that we're going to tape it onto this extra piece of plastic right here, and then we're going to tape it to the back of the case right here. And that's basically all you need to do in the simplest of terms, but I would like to share you guys some tricks and tips to make it easier to basically tape this extra part of the plastic protection to the back of the jewel case. So what I usually do is that I cut off a very small piece of masking tape first, and then what you do is that you attach this small piece of plastic tape to the other side of the plastic protection thingy on the right side of it. It's a little bit complicated to explain, just basically watch what I'm doing. But what you're essentially doing is that this small piece of tape will be basically hold the plastic piece in place while you're trying to tape the rest of this plastic protection piece thingy right here. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in the next step. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make a longer piece of masking tape, and you know, it can be a little bit shorter than the length of the jewel case, but it must not be longer than the length of the jewel case. Otherwise you're gonna have like extra bits of tape that sticks onto stuff, and that's not fun. But basically you cut a longer piece of tape right here, and then what you're going to do is that you're going to tape the rest of this extra part of the plastic protection piece to the back of the jewel case right here. And once you've done that, you're finished with everything. And now you basically have a brand new looking game, or audio CD in some cases, that you can basically, yeah, in order to get it out of this plastic sleeve, you need to slide it out like I just did right there. And basically once you've done that, you have very easy access to like the game and all that kind of stuff, which is very cool. So what I usually do is I pop the game into the console, or you know, the CD into the CD player, and just leave the jewel case sitting on top of the sandwich bag. And then once you're done with everything, you basically take the disc, put it back into its case, and then slide the entire CD jewel case back into its the sandwich bag. Now, it can be a little bit difficult to use this, basically slide it back in there, but I found the easy way is to slide it in at an angle, as you're seeing right here. And then once you've done that, you basically slowly pull the entire plastic over the CD jewel case, and then once you got it all down like that, you then pull everything down, and everything should come to a nice fit. Now, do you guys remember earlier when I said in this video I preferred the Boulder sandwich bag over the Publix one? Well, the reason is because the Boulder sandwich bag is much more thick, so it makes it easier to basically slide this plastic bag over the jewel case. The Publix sandwich bag is much more flimsy, which makes it much harder to slide it over the game case. Now, ironically, in this case, the Publix sandwich bag slid in very easily on this example right here, but usually I have a very hard time with this. So my recommendation is that if you do manage to have access to the Boulder sandwich bags, that's the one I would definitely get first. But if you can't get that, then I would definitely settle for the Publix. And stay away from the Ziploc bags. They're atrocious. So that basically concludes this tutorial. Yeah, I'm sorry this tutorial went a little bit long-winded and all that kind of stuff, but I felt like it was necessary to share all these details in order to basically help you guys out on this kind of stuff, because man, oh man, it looks really awesome to basically see your entire music collection or your game collection look brand spanking new. It looks awesome. And and I really wanted to help you guys and basically allowing you guys to be able to do the same thing with your collection as well. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. And yeah, so Happy New Year's, everyone. I really hope you guys have a wonderful Happy New Year. This is the Sega Genicast. My name is Michael, and may the dream be with you.